Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group meeting. It's September 16th, 2022. Our agenda this morning, we will start out with success stories. I did hear of one landing. I forget the person's name, but I do know we had one landing in the last couple of weeks. We'll then have everybody put their 30-second introductions into the chat window. We'll then hear from our committee reports. We'll do workshops, job fairs, interview success workshop, career tip of the week, and then we will have our main event coming up here at about the top of the hour. For those people on Zoom, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just enter your questions into the chat window. For those watching on Facebook, if you have any questions, just put your questions into the comment field. We'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that any comments you put in the Zoom chat window will not appear in the recording. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. The group's been around since the late 1990s. I took it over in 2007 when the prior leader said he landed a job and said, who wanted to take over? I think I scratched my face. He said, okay, Jeff, you're it. So I've been doing that ever since. In 2008, I started a website called careerdfw.org, a website to help those who are unemployed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In 2012, I launched a second website, careerusa.org, to help those around the United States. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search. You may not know. It is available on Amazon, or if you see me in person, I do have copies with me usually. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team, which you'll hear more about that in just a moment. Well, we'd like to start the meeting off with good news success stories. Do we have anybody out there who's got good news to share? Anyone? Going once, going twice? All right, well, let's move on. So what we'd like everybody to do now is please, in the chat window, please put in your 30-second introductions. We'd like to know your name, phone number, email address, position you're looking for, 2 or 3 target companies, and then hit the return key. I will capture all this information. I will put it out into a spreadsheet this afternoon, or put it out on our updated agenda or our contact list, and I'll put it out into an email to everybody this afternoon. So if you're using this as a workforce event, please do it so I can have a record in case they happen to contact me. And we'll put 30 seconds on the clock. Okay, I'll leave a little bit more time here. We'd like everybody, please put your information in there. That way we can capture it all and do that. So that would be great. All right, let's see here. Just as a reminder, if you know somebody who's unemployed, never been, who's looking for a new job, whatever, let them know about Career DFW and Career USA, 2 totally free websites that are there just to help you. They don't collect any personal information. It's just there to help somebody in their job search. And also right on that very front page is I just lost my job. What do I do now? There's a great little 1-page handout that talks about things you can do. And one of the things you'll find on the Career DFW calendar is a bunch, the Career DFW website is a bunch of calendars. This is the everything calendar that shows everything that's going on. The pink are job fairs, the blue are networking groups that are meeting in person, purple are webinars that are happening, all the gold sessions there you see, those are special workshops that are going on. So check for those living in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, check the Career DFW calendar. For those outside the DFW area, everything is really pretty good except for the blue and the pink things, because those are happening only here in the DFW area. All right, let me talk a second about the practice interview team. The practice interview team is a group of mostly unemployed people who have been hiring managers in the past. So they're out looking for a job just like you. And what they can do is they can offer you a free, totally free interview, practice interview. You can do it multiple times, and they would be glad to help you with whatever stage you are in your interview. So if you just happen to be new in the job search, or you just want to practice and you don't really have anything happening, going in person, you can just find a job description on the internet and download it and send it along with your resume into the Dallas Pit Crew. Tell them you're just practicing from scratch. If you are 2 or 3 interviews in it with a company, let them know what that is. Let them know you've already had 2 or 3 interviews, because they will customize the interview just for you to help you with that. Their slogan is practice early, practice often. You probably need to practice 3 or 4 times to make it worthwhile. So please consider doing it more than one time, because the more you practice, the better you will become. All you have to do is send a resume and a job description, and what your schedule is 2 to 3 days out to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com, and they will get back in touch with you and give you all the details as far as what to do for a practice interview. If you'd like to schedule a one-way interview, you could send a request to Walt Glass at walt_glass@yahoo.com, or to me, Jeff Morris, at txjmorr@yahoo.com. A one-way interview is where the computer will go and ask you a question, and you have to give a response within a couple of minutes. It's very odd because there's nobody at the other end. Many companies are starting to do this because they're just trying to streamline their interviewing process to be able to interview, to be able to see a lot of people before. So if you'd like to do a one-way interview, only you will see it. We'll send you a link. You go take the interview. Once the interview's over, we will go and then send you the link back so you can go back and watch it and you can evaluate yourself. So please consider, if you haven't done a one-way interview, and you're welcome to do those multiple times also. So you can reach out to Walt or myself. Okay, the Interview Success Workshop. Good morning, Walt.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. So what is the Interview Success Workshop all about, and how does that compare to the Pit Crew, which I heartily recommend and support? Well, when I was retired after 25 years, third round of downsizing, and I asked the Lord one day, should I take this early out or not? Well, the next day I got a phone call at the office, and this person said, I need to come down and learn your job. And I said, I can't get a larger signal than that from you, Lord. So it looks like I ought to take that. Let me stop that phone. So I did. And so I went out job hunting and looked around, found an interview, and flunked it. So I developed the Interview Success Workshop. And it's all about figuring out what companies are buying and how we can sell that to them, because the interview is a selling presentation. I developed a model called the I am, I do, I help. Companies buy who we are, our personality, our characteristics, our soft skills. What we do, that's our experience, our education, our knowledge and skills, the hard skills, and how we can help. I don't see a lot of people in a practice interview talking about the value that they bring, and it's a strong differentiator. And so one of the things I also want to include in the workshop is how to differentiate yourself by selling who we are, what we do, and how we help. So it's free. You need to register to attend. I like a very informal environment. I call it the learning interview. If you need to register, just point your camera at that QR code. It'll start you out with an email. You need to edit it a little bit, put in a couple pieces of information, and I'll be glad to give you the dates that are available so that you can be registered. No need to, in a learning situation, really, there's no need to have stress and anxiety and fear and all that stuff going through your mind. So I like a relaxed environment. We're going to cover the basic categories of questions. So it's kind of the fundamentals. We'll have options, strategies, structures, ways we might answer a question, which depends on the question, the person asking, and where you are in the process. So it's free. It's not totally free because it just requires a couple hours of your time. And my job and my objective is to make those 2 hours extremely worthwhile for you, to help you gain those skills and confidence for a really successful job interview. You finally landed the interview. So now what will you do? You could call 1-800, oh my God, or simply give interview practice a nod.
All right. Well, you messed me up. You didn't go learning without squirming, so I wasn't sure you were moving on.
Well, I have reached
age.
I have reached the age where I'm no longer required to remember anything. My apologies, Jeff. I should have put it in there.
Okay, Steve. Nice. Thank you for the comment. Okay. All right. It's time to move on to the career tip of the week. We post a brand new tip of the week every week on the Career DFW and Career USA websites. Every Saturday afternoon, there's a new tip, and Rosanna is going to tell us what this past week's tip was.
Good morning, everybody, all in person and online audience members. All right. Well, before I get started with this week's tip, last week's tip, we talked about volunteerism and where to place it within your LinkedIn profile. I, at that time, had said I was going to add in some different virtual volunteer links into the chat, and I didn't. So I'm correcting it today, and I'll make sure I add that to the chat today. So I apologize for not honoring my word last week. All right. So this week's tip of the week is dated 9/11. And it is what to say when a recruiter asks your salary requirement. Here's how to navigate the often uncomfortable topic of compensation by Sarah Schofetti. It can be such a deer in the headlights, panic-inducing moment. You've spent weeks scrolling through job listings, ruling out most of them, and then selecting a few that fit your background and career path, tailored and tweaked your cover letter 10 times, and finally gotten a bite from a hiring manager at a company you'd love to work for. Not 5 minutes into the nebulously named introductory conversation, which is really just a screening call, they nail you to the wall with, "And what are your salary requirements?" It's a tricky spot. We must find a diplomatic reply that keeps us in the running without shooting ourselves in the foot with a low number. As a job seeker, it pays to be prepared with a savvy answer that keeps you in contention for the position while still securing the highest number possible. So first, how to research what a position pays. First, as annoying and backwards as it is, you must research the market and salary ranges for your position. Companies want to see that you've done your homework and that you generally are aware of what the position will pay. As the HR consulting firm Robert Half recommends, check out reputable sources such as the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics for federal data on wages in your industry. Also review the 2022 salary guide from Robert Half to get the average national salary for the position you're seeking. Next, how to answer the salary requirement question. Once armed with this information, it's time to get your response ready. There are a few best practices recommended by career experts. First, you want to delay the question. If you're just beginning the interview process, saying you need more time before you provide a salary expectation is reasonable. For example, I'd like to learn more about the position and responsibilities so I can provide a more realistic expectation. Keep in mind, however, you will eventually need to discuss salary, and there are advantages to speaking candidly about money early on, so you can rule out any positions that don't meet your minimum salary requirement. Next, provide a salary range. Rather than giving one specific number, give a range you're comfortable with. Make sure your target number is close to the bottom figure that you provide, because the employer will likely opt for something on the lower end of your range. Provide a range with only about $5,000 to a $10,000 gap between the high and the low end. Next, flip the script. Many career experts recommend flipping the script and getting their salary requirement first to avoid being lowballed and leaving money on the table. Career coach Rosie McCarthy shares the following script on her Instagram page. It says, Before I discuss salary in detail, I'd need to have a better understanding of the exact role, scope, and level of responsibility, as well as what the global package entails. Can you share the range for the role, and I'll let you know if it's what I had in mind? Hopefully, they will engage in your inquiry and not say, I just need a number, speaking from personal experience. If they won't play ball, or if you'd like to take a different tactic, see below. And there are a couple of tactics we're getting ready to go through. First, provide negotiation options. Keeping in mind that salary is just one piece of the compensation puzzle, let them know you need to hear more about the overall package, including benefits, discretionary income, vacation, and other perks before definitively deciding. Indeed.com provides this example. I am seeking a position that pays between $75,000 and $80,000 annually, but I am open to negotiating salary depending upon benefits, bonuses, equity, stock options, and other opportunities. Next, when it's time to give a number. When you've reached the end of your interview process and it's time to settle on a number, you may find the initial range or number you provided is too low. If that's the case, begin your response by conveying your excitement about the position, summarizing the responsibilities, and what you will bring to the table. For example, I'm really excited by this opportunity. I respect the range already discussed, but after hearing the scope of responsibilities and considering my number of years of experience excelling in this similar role, I think X dollars is a fair figure. I'm confident my years doing XYZ have equipped me well to succeed in this position. And then, and this is very important, do not worry if they will retract the offer simply because you advocated to earn what you're worth. They have already dedicated resources to vetting and interviewing, and they're not going to pull the plug simply because you negotiated your salary. This is a common and expected part of the process that we all should be engaging in. So this is the, again, career tip for the week, dated 9/11, and it's what to say when a recruiter asks your salary requirement. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Rosanna, thank you very, very much. All righty. If you'd like to join us for lunch today at 11:45, we're going to go to Country Burger, 3115 West Parker Road in Plano. It's on the northwest corner of Parker and Independence. They've got burger, chicken, salads, and other things that you can grab that they have there. So Country Burger today at 11:45 if you'd like to join me for lunch. I know I'll be there, and I'm not sure who else will come. So come join us. All right, our main event today is we're going to hear from Mike Perry, how to make a networking strategy that works. I emailed Mike about a month ago to ask him to represent, and he says, I'm retired and I'm spending time with my grandkids. So I said, well, can I replay your session from last year? He said, sure, that would be great. So what we're going to do is I'm going to replay the session from last year, and it's about 45 or 50 minutes long. And if you have any questions, just put them in the chat box and we can talk all about them as soon as the presentation is over. So give me just a second to get that loaded up.
Okay. Today, Jeff wanted me to talk about, he recently heard me talk to a group here in Northeast Ohio, which is where I'm from. I've been a hiring manager for the most of my 45-year career. And for the last 20 some years, I've been trying to give back my way to pay it forward, if you will, to those folks who are in job transition. I find, as I'm sure Jeff and all his volunteers and coaches find, there's a lot of terrible information out there to help job seekers. And I think because of that, the same way that Jeff and his crew are paying it forward, I've tried to help out. This has nothing to do with the financial planning, obviously, that I run this business for, but it's our way of paying it forward. Now, you see on the title slide here, this is an understatement, but just a couple of years ago, that's what networking really, I think, people perceived and what it looked like there on the left. And thanks to our friend, the COVID pandemic, this is a lot what networking looks like today. We've gone from what people perceived it to be large groups all the time going to meetings. And listen, that was very effective, but can't do that anymore. We have to become, COVID forced us to become very familiar with Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Skype, getting on the telephone more. And although we're back to one-on-one meetings, this group thing is just really not where we're going anymore. This is really going to be the basis for my presentation today. And Jeff saw this when I presented through a local job seekers group here a few weeks ago. But if you look at this photo, it basically, to me, encapsulates, you know how they say a picture paints 1,000 words. This is what everything you've already heard this morning, this is really what the essence of all this is. You really have to be that pencil that sticks out from the crowd. Whether you do it in your interview, whether you do it on one-on-ones, whether you do it in a networking group, you still have to be perceived amongst all those other pencils or job seekers. You have to separate yourself from that sea of sameness that there is. There's still a lot of people out there looking for work. Even though there's a lot more open jobs or a lot more people looking than there are jobs, I guess, you still have to realize that you have to work hard to differentiate yourself from the rest of those around you. Now, one of the things that I always tell people is there's two main questions that you have to make sure that the hiring manager, that somebody like me, can walk away from, whether we're networking or whether I'm interviewing you. There's two things that you have to answer, regardless of what all the other interview questions are. I have to come away from this. And in networking, it's very important that you get that individual or the public, if you're going to do your networking through social media, you have to make sure that I can answer these two questions as I'm reading about you or we're talking. And so, like I said, whatever is written about you, whatever you write, whatever is said about you or whatever you say has to answer these two questions. If I hire you, why am I going to look like a genius? Why am I going to look like a really smart person for bringing you onto my team? If I'm not, I really have no incentive to bring you on my team. If you're networking with someone, they've got to be able to convince me, the hiring manager, the mutual, the person you want them to refer you to, they've got to convince me you're going to move the needle for me. You're going to make me look like a genius. And so that leads into number two. How are you going to help my team, my group, my division, my company? How are you going to help us go from good to great, from worst to first? Now, you guys can all sympathize with this, maybe to some degree, but I'm from the Cleveland area. So my favorite football team is the Cleveland Browns. We haven't all had a really stellar future in the last 20 some years. And I always tell people, I would much rather be the person who hired someone like Tom Brady than the one who hired Johnny Manziel. And I know Johnny's famous and popular down there in Texas, but he wasn't that popular up here. And he didn't make the Browns or the Browns leadership look good that they brought him on board. But if you're the New England Patriots or if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you look really smart because you hired Tom Brady. And ultimately, as a hiring manager, that's really the sense that I want to get. Now, before you start, because networking is just another channel, another avenue for you to tell your story. And one of the gentlemen before was talking about using the STAR method. Now, I think everything that you do has to be focused on those two questions, but presenting yourself really using that STAR methodology. Situation, task, action, result. You have to tell a story. Well, that story begins with who are you? Why do I really even want you? And so when we talk about personal branding, the thing that I really always tell people is, what really defines you? How do people perceive you? Do they perceive you as a person that says a lot, but doesn't live up to promises? Because that creates a real reputation or a brand for you. Or are you a person of action? So in other words, what defines you? Actions or words? Secondly, what value do you think people believe that you bring to the table? Because at the end of the day, whether I'm pushing you as a candidate that XYZ hiring manager or HR generalist should consider, somebody's resume should be put at the top of the pile. Why? What value does the person that I want to push through the system as a networking contact, what value can I tell you about that individual that's important to you, the potential hiring manager? And so I've got some homework for you that I hope all of you spend the time to do. This won't take 5 minutes. It'll take longer than that if you do it properly. I want you to think about 5 words that you believe really define who you are, how people see you. How do you think people see you? 5 words, and put them in the order of the strength. In other words, what do people, when they think about Mike Perry, what do they think about first? What do they think about secondly? What's my greatest strength? What's the strongest part of my personal brand? And then I want you to go around and ask people that you trust to give you honest feedback. I want you to ask them to do the same thing for you. What are 5 words that they believe define who you are? In other words, your brand, your story, the essence of your story. And put them in that same order. I guarantee you that for most of your contacts, not going to be the same as what your 5 were, or at least the order that you put them in. So now we have gaps. We have gaps between what you think you are and what you think other people see you as, and the reality, because perception is reality, the reality of how others see you. One of the other gentlemen was talking about doing the 360 analysis. I did that, thankfully, early on in my career. I will tell you, as wonderful, I think I realized very quickly, I thought I was a legend in my own mind. Because when I got done with that, and I had a terrific counselor who walked me through that process, I learned a lot about myself that I thought I knew, but clearly I did not. And really at that point, what I had to do is I had to make some choices about myself, about what was I going to do moving forward, because there clearly were gaps between what I thought people thought of me, how well I worked, how well I led, and the reality of what they thought. And I had to work hard to close that gap. And here's what this exercise does. Figure it's a mini version of that. Please do this. People are surprised. The feedback I always get, and I've talked to thousands of people, the feedback that I get when people do this simple exercise, it's amazing. It's a real eye-opener. So please spend the time to do that. Now, in all the things that when I've talked to candidates, when I talk to hiring managers, when I talk to people who have been in transition and landed, and I say, what are the things that you think if you could, you'd do over again? What did you learn from this whole process in regards to networking? Number one is it's a poor approach. People take the wrong approach. They think, if I meet Jeff for the first time, I'm kind of trained and I feel like I'm compelled to immediately go into telling him I've lost my job, I'm in transition, and then immediately put the switch on to give him my elevator pitch. And at that point, normally Jeff is already back on his heels and he really is looking for somebody else to talk to. That is not the way to start building a relationship when it's all about me, and I need your help right away. It's too much. It's not a hard sell. It's about building relationships slowly. Think of the best relationships you have personally and professionally. They did not happen overnight. There's no way. It takes a long time. Now, part of that, I'm a real bug about communication. And as I see, this is the first time I've been to one of your meetings, and I love all the communication that's going on here, from the calendars going over your meetings. It's very clear what is going on. To me, things I've always told the people who work for me is communication is number one, always, amongst each other and with our clients, always. So if you don't have a clear message, I don't understand how you believe in any networking capacity. If your message is not clear, how you think I'm going to help you? I can't. That's no different than me getting laid off, going to my next door neighbor and said, hey, Pat, I just got laid off. Oh, dude, that sucks. Yeah. Hey, can you help me? Here's my resume. Sure. Is that guy really going to be able to help me? No, absolutely not. He wants to, but I have to help him help me. That's really the essence of that number two, is you've got to help people in your networking help you. And that starts with a well-defined message that you're giving them. It takes patience to do this. Again, it's not a hard sell. It doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to meet someone once and they're going to go to some CEO and go, oh, I met a guy for breakfast yesterday for an hour. You got to hire him. It doesn't work that way. More often than not, just doesn't work that way. I've got to make you a believer in me and what I can do for your friend or your contact, so that you go back and tell him those two things. I'm going to make them look like a genius, and I'm going to help their teams and group go from good to great. Now, make sure that you have something of value to leave behind. From your research of the company or the individual that you're talking to, that should give you some clues as to what's going to be most effective. So my examples here are executive profile, a business card. I remember when I got laid off back in 2001 from the banking company that I was with. There was another large bank in the Cleveland area that I interviewed with, and I got an interview very quickly for a district manager job. And the first thing, when they called and said, hey, we'd like to interview you tomorrow, I said, no, I next week. And there was kind of a puzzlement in the voice of the HR person saying, didn't you say you got laid off? Yes, but I'm busy until next week. So I went, and what I took that week to do is I found out what all the branches were going to be of the retail bank that I was going to be the manager of, the district manager. I went to each one of them and I did a mystery shop. I turned around and created a 10-page report that I gave to the guy during the first interview. 10 minutes into the first interview, they made me an offer, because they said nobody ever spent the time to do this. Nobody. So if you want to leave something behind, think about what's going to make an impact in that particular situation. You're going to know that because of the research that you do on that company. And we're going to talk about number 5 down the road here, but poor execution of follow-up. If you're not top of mind, then and you're stressed.
Did we lose connection? Jeff, are we still connected? I can't hear anybody.
I can hear you guys, but the volume is for the presentation is stopped.
The video froze.
Who are in their 70s and 80s still running companies because they want to, not because they have to. They got money coming out of their ears. They want to. Those two grandpas could both be talking about expansion strategy, not chess. You have to understand that any of those people, caregivers, realtors, daycare providers, assisted living for grandma, hiking groups, every one of those people knows somebody. And can you really say to yourself, honestly, look yourself in the mirror and say, everyone that I have in contact with, I've explored whether there are networking contacts that they have that would benefit my search. I'll tell you right now, I'll bet that not one of you listening today can say yes to that. It's a common mistake that people make. So look farther. 6 degrees of separation. We all know the drill on that. It usually is 1 or 2. It's almost never 6. We're always amazed at how many people we know that we didn't realize, or the mutual contacts. So I talked about before about communication, about telling your story effectively. So again, be clear, what's your objective? If I go meet with Jeff for a breakfast, if I get him on a Zoom call, why did I do it? What was my objective? What do I want to get out of that? Jeff needs to have some expectations, but I need to be very clear to him about what I'm looking for as the conversation takes place. I don't want to hang up with him or leave a breakfast or whatever the meeting is and have Jeff sit there and go, well, he seems like a nice guy, but I'm not quite sure what he wants. Again, he doesn't know how he can help me. So you got to be clear. Make sure that it's simple and complete. How is your value proposition going to sound? How should it sound? Listen, for every company, for every opportunity, you're going to have to customize that a little bit depending on what the company is looking for. You can have 10 companies looking for the exact same position. You're going to find 10 slightly to very different job descriptions for the same position title, because every company has their own biases about what they think is important. That's why you have to customize. How are you going to bring value to the table in that particular situation? How are you going to make a difference? So make sure that when you're doing this and you're putting together your story, which is digital, it's verbal, it's when and we'll get into some of the social media type of networking that you can do as part of this whole strategy. Make sure everything is in sync. I was telling Jeff a few weeks ago when he and I were on a call, I've often talked to candidates and who I've maybe seriously considered. And when I look at their LinkedIn profile, I look at their resume, and I have a quick phone screen type interview with them, I think it's 3 different people. Because they haven't done a good job of making sure that they've done an inventory of themselves to make sure that what they have on social media matches up exactly with really what's on their resume and what they're going to talk about, either in a networking environment or when they're interviewed. Remember that a networking conversation is just another form of an interview. It really is. It's the same thing. So those gentlemen who do the interview practice for you, not only practice an actual interview, but practice a networking conversation with them. A lot of it is similar. Some of those questions that the individual may ask you so that they can do a good job of telling their contact why you're so valuable, they're going to ask you some of those same questions, and it would be great to practice that. Remember, again, at the end of the day, it's help me help you. Now, this is from a career page from one of Northeast Ohio's largest employers. I want you just to take a look at this and read that description, because when I tell you to target your message and customize your value proposition, this is the kind of research that to me is essential for you to do that. If you're not taking the time to look at this kind of stuff, I'm not quite sure what kind of results you're expecting. This company and more companies' career pages on their websites are getting very clear and very robust. They want to screen out people that are not qualified. In other words, it's a very nice way of saying, don't waste our time. If you're really not going to be this, don't waste our time. And when you look at this and see what the company right here, they're showing you, these are the things that are important to us. Sustainability. There's their description about pushing the limits. Are you going to take what's good and make it better? Hey, does that sound familiar? How are you going to help us go from good to great? This is the way companies feel. Ethical, legal contact, diversity, inclusion. These are things that are important to that company. You're not going to find this on everybody's webpage. But if you want a job here at this company, Lubrizol, that makes additives and lubricants, you better know what they're asking for. Or I don't understand how you think you're going to tell a story that is going to be attractive. We all know how important it is to make a good first impression. And I think what people forget is when you're introduced to someone digitally, over the phone, in person, one of the things that you have to do is you have to make sure that that person becomes the focus. It's, as they say, it's not all about me. It's about the person that I'm talking to. I have to make sure that I'm delivering a good message, but a lot of it is I need to, again, to start and really find out how I can do things, how I can help them. And I do that also by making sure that I make a good first impression with what we call presence. Your presence, whether you want to call that nonverbals, but how are you coming across? How are you carrying yourself, your posture, your delivery of your message? We ran a networking group some years ago, right after the recession in 2008. We did it for a few years, and we used to have a circle time, we called it, and we had everybody, much like Jeff does, give 30 seconds, tell us how we can help you. And I'll never forget this one gentleman who happened to be standing like right next to me. He puts his head down, he talks real quietly, and he starts saying, "I'm a dynamic salesperson and an aggressive leader." And his head was down, and he was talking quietly. And I looked at him and I stopped him and I said, "No, you're not. Not like that." Because no matter what he said, the way he presented himself did not jive with the words that were coming out of his mouth. I said, pick up, be proud. If you really feel that's who you are, pick your head up, get those shoulders back. Show me that you're confident in yourself. Every aspect of your body language tells me whether I can really believe you or not. Now, remember I talked about this is a relationship. So we develop these connections. They don't happen overnight. I too often run into people who feel their equation for success in networking is how many business cards they've given out. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing. It's not the number of phone calls you make. It's not this is not cold calling. This is about effective conversations, things that are going to get you some results. So as usual, we've all heard this phrase, it's not quantity, it's quality. It's not the number of people you had a conversation with in an hour. This isn't speed dating. It's the quality of those conversations. If you go, if you went into the proverbial crowded room of 100 people and had 3 meaningful conversations where you created some follow-ups, started to create relationships, that's a job well done. If you go in and give out 100 business cards and talk to everybody for a minute and a half, you've wasted a lot of time because nobody knows who you are. It's the 3 people that you really started to build something with. You found out, how can I help you? I've always found that if it's about giving, not getting. If I can help someone initially with something, they almost always come back and say, well, Mike, wow, thanks for introducing me to this person, or this helped my business by you directing me over here, or I didn't know you knew that person. How can I help you? Well, let me tell you. But at that point, I've started to build something. I've started to build that relationship because I've given something to them. It wasn't about me right away. Now, I talked about updates earlier on, and I said I'd get to it. So to me, there's three things that are very important about follow-up when you're doing networking. The updates, a lot of people, again, this isn't a one-off. I don't meet Jeff once and I never talk to him again. I need to give Jeff some updates. Now, how am I going to do that? I always tell people I recommend a mix of phone, in person, and of course, obviously in today's environment, Zoom or Microsoft Teams. He always doesn't necessarily need a phone call, doesn't always have the time for me. He's working, I'm not. I want to be respectful of that. But one of the things that I'm going to do in one of our initial conversations is to say, Jeff, I want to keep you up to date on my job search. I want to let you know as things may change. Maybe I targeted this organization and now I no longer, because I've interviewed with them, I no longer have an interest in them. I need to tell Jeff that. So he doesn't keep looking, thinking that's number 1 or 2 on my target list. I need to let him know that. So I asked Jeff, how often may I give you updates? And what do you prefer? What's the method you prefer? Do you want email, text you, Zoom call, phone call? What do you prefer? Get his permission. He'll give you what he wants as far as the frequency and the methodology for what works best for him. And to me, that always has worked extremely well. Now, I don't really recommend anybody do what this guy's doing in the picture. I never would. But to me, that is the essence of not only self-confidence, but confidence in the person who put that belt on your back. And to me, the self-confidence is the key to being that pencil that rises above the rest. It's the key to making that first great impression with presence. Again, to me, the self-confidence and presence are the same. Your self-confidence makes me a believer in what you're telling me. We've all talked to people who are so confident in themselves, they're passionate in the way they talk, the way they deliver their message, that you're on the edge of your seat. I could have somebody else who doesn't have that enthusiasm, who doesn't have that sense of self-confidence, deliver the same exact message, and you wouldn't believe a word they said. It's a powerful, powerful tool. And it's like the person who put their head down and was telling me they were a dynamic salesperson. Not like that, you weren't. You have to exude confidence. That passion, it has to come through on it, whether it's a Zoom call or a phone call. It's not a video call. Your passion needs to come through so that the individual feels like you really do believe this. It can't be like, yeah, Jeff, I'm really excited that you're interviewing me. I really would love to work for your company. Wow, I think I might have just put Jeff to sleep. That doesn't help. But if he senses that I'm really, and he sees that I've done some things, I've done research, and I come across excited about the conversation, he's going to think a whole lot more of me to push me along in that networking chain than if I just kind of come across as any other pencil. In his mind, I got to be the one that stands up. Now, the last thing I say here is, tell me how you really feel, how you really think. Now, it seems like that should be a no-brainer, but I think all too often, people in networking situations feel that they have to put some sort of game face on and say what has to be said, and it isn't necessarily true. May not be a lie, but it's not necessarily true. You draw that line wherever you want. But I know when I got this job at Zarka Financial over 19 years ago, when they interviewed me, the two owners who are husband and wife, they asked me to look at some marketing material that they had put together and wanted my opinion on it. So I looked at it and it was terrible. So I looked at it and I told them, when they said, what do you think? I said, well, I would get rid of it all. This isn't really very professional. If you want your marketing materials to reflect your professionalism and you want people to bring their money here, this isn't how you do it. And they both kind of, straightened up and looked at me and like, whoa, okay, well, how much is that going to cost? And I said, well, I don't know sitting here, but it's clearly far more than you've spent up to this point. And so that's just who I am. I'm very upfront, very candid. So they kind of pushed everything back in this envelope, talked to me a little bit and said, we'll call you back. And I walked out of there thinking, well, that's fine. I could tell they weren't real happy about that response. I got home that there was a voice message. They wanted to make me an offer. Went back the next day and the gentleman pushed an offer letter across the conference room table and I pushed it back, didn't even look at it. And they looked at each other and said, well, why did you push it back? And I said, what am I doing here? They said, what do you mean? I said, why am I here? Last night, I could tell that what I told you about the marketing stuff, you didn't like it because you probably both did it yourself. And they smiled and said, well, you're exactly right about that. But out of all the candidates that we talked to, you're the only one that told us the truth. I've been here 19 years. They needed somebody to tell them the truth. And then I guess my question out to you is, do you want to work for an organization where they don't value the truth? I would think most of you should or would answer, of course not. So why don't you tell the truth when you're in a networking? Why don't you make sure you tell the truth and be who you are, be you. They're hiring you. You're the product. You're selling, but before one of the things that I saw there was selling who I am. That's the product. Your value, your reputation, it's you. I always tell people a brand is not a logo. It's not a box of Kleenex. It's not a product. It's people. It's everyone. It's you. So you're selling you. Make sure you do that. Make sure you believe in you. Make sure you believe in the product. That's sales 101. Make sure you believe in the product. In this case, the product's you. So when you do social networking, here's what I know the expectations are. I have a lot of hiring managers in my network, and I'm constantly picking their brains. What do you like? What are you looking for? What candidates are you really putting at the top? When somebody networks and pushes a resume to you, what is it that attracts you? What do you stop and why do you read it? What do you see? And here's the kind of things that they want to see on social media, because most everybody is going and checking you out on social media. Why shouldn't they? There's a lot of information out there about you, potentially. So make sure that the recommendations that you have aren't from 15 years ago. Those are irrelevant. Make sure that the recommendations that you have are accurate, that they are telling a story about what you do today and in the recent future. You know, we live in a world where, what have you done for me lately? Not 15 years ago. I don't know that guy from 15 years ago still can do that. I need to see recommendations that are more current. So if you don't have those, these people who are in your network, pick up the phone, call them, email them, ask them to give you a more recent recommendation. That carries a lot of weight. I'm sure, Jeff, I know you said you guys have LinkedIn programs too, do you not? Okay. I'm sure they're talking about recommendations, but make sure that they are current. Just having one doesn't mean anything, again, if it's too old. If I'm going to say, and I believe that my brand is X and that's how I'm presenting myself, your social media better be in sync with that. It better make sure that it's proof of your stated brand. So for example, if I want to be in sales and I'm that dynamic salesperson, and I'm telling you that, oh, I'm a great networker and I create a ton of relationships. Okay. If I look up your LinkedIn profile and see there's 5 connections and they all have the same last name as you, yeah, no, apparently not the same. So do a digital inventory of yourself. What's out there? Google yourself. Have you all done that? Google your name. See what's out there, because I'm going to do that as an employer. What am I going to see? Shouldn't you know what's out there? What if I ask you about something that's out there? You can't look at me like you're surprised. You better know what's out there. Again, make sure that what's out there support. Remember how I said I thought I was talking to 3 different people. You have to make sure all this stuff, all the puzzle pieces, create that picture of you that you want represented. You got to work hard at this. This stuff doesn't take 5 minutes. You got to invest some time in it, and make sure that nothing inappropriate. We read about this stuff every day. Athletes, politicians, celebrities, they're constantly backing off of things they put out there, photos, tweets, messages that get them in trouble. They think they're funny or correct at the time, and months or years later, they're in deep trouble. And you have to understand, none of this stuff goes away. None of it. When Jeff was on the online, when I did a presentation a few weeks ago to the a job search group up here, I showed a slide that from Ohio State University, where some of my kids went, and one of my sons had told me about a big riot they had right before, a couple of weeks before school was out, and I made sure he was okay, and that he wasn't calling me from the police station. And then I asked him if anybody he knew was involved, because he said some kids, they were throwing beer bottles at police. And I said, well, do you know anybody? And he told me a kid in his class, one of his classes, was one of the ones arrested. I said, give me his name. The next day I looked it up, and there was a horrific intake pictures at the police station of some kid all beat up. And the story above his picture was all about how he threw beer bottles at police. That was in 2011. That was 10 years ago. I looked it up the other day. I can find 7 different places where that same story still exists on the internet. 10 years later. This stuff never goes away. Be careful. Do a digital inventory of yourself and understand what's out there. Now, I talked again about first impressions a few slides ago. Often when I speak, people will send me LinkedIn, contact requests, connection requests. And here's an example of 2 that I actually got. So the one from Irene is what I would recommend. That format, that type is what I would recommend. Again, I'm hopeful that in the LinkedIn presentations that you've had or you will have, they talk about this. But this is part of networking, folks. This is how you're representing yourself. So I spoke at a job seekers group, and the next day I got several connection requests. One was from Irene, and you can read what she said. I always like when people don't just use the canned, hey, let's connect. I want the person who I saw took the time, invested some time, and wrote me something. That person has more, to me, more potential. They're putting more effort into things. They're showing me the kind of person that they are. That's a great first impression. Now, look at the difference between hers and the picture that was on the other one, and this other guy, we'll call him Mr. Blurry, that he just sent me the canned, let's connect on LinkedIn. Well, you can guess which one I connected with and which one I did not. Again, look at your LinkedIn profile. Jeff, I'm sure your folks who give these presentations are prompting your membership to do this. Folks, it's so important. Everybody today looks at LinkedIn. Recruiters are, hiring managers are. Make sure that it's a very robust representation of you. That's part of the networking process. That's part of your overall strategy. Now, as far as going that extra mile, here, I'm going to go over a little trick that I find virtually nobody does. In all the hundreds of presentations I've done, I've yet to find anybody who's actually used this as a tool. I still bring it up because I think it's very effective. So I showed you the Lubrizol website before, and let's assume I'm looking for a marketing position. So if I really want to figure out who I can connect with, who I can network with to get my resume and myself in front of somebody at Lubrizol Corporation in the marketing department, all I have to do is a search, and that, you know, LinkedIn allows you, and I don't have the premium version, I just have the standard grunt version. I'm looking for Lubrizol Corporation in the greater Cleveland area, and I put a keyword of marketing in there. Those are the filters that I use. So I got 57 results. You know, they're a very large company. And so the trick here is go through this, and if this helps you find who to network with or how to get to that individual. So I want to look for who's the boss, who is the director of the group that I'm going to be in, that I want to be in. So the lady on top, Diane, she's the senior director of global marketing in Greater Cleveland. Certainly that's probably a person I want to get to know or get my resume in front of. There's others who are lower level directors or managers. I have to sift through this. I'm not going to network with all 57 contacts, but I want to try and figure out to whom I want to focus my energy. And then I got to go back and find out, are there any mutual contacts? You all know from looking people up that I have with Diane, I have a couple of mutual contacts. Both of those people that are listed are great contacts of mine. So if I wanted to meet Diane, I could call John or Nada Norval and say, hey, here's what I'm doing. I want to get into Lubrizol in the marketing area. Can you do one of two, either of two things? One, can you get my resume over to Diane? I mean, you know who I am. You can pitch me, but let's talk about why I want to work there. Secondly, do you know Diane well enough so that the three of us can either get on a Zoom call or I can take you guys to breakfast or lunch? Get me in front of her. Both of those people that are listed as mutual contacts are people that would do that for me. That's part of your networking strategy. Figuring out what's the back door into these places. And so if you go in and find out who's in charge in that area, you know who to go after. You can also look at the people that, if I want to be in Diane's group, who did Diane hire? So all I got to do is look at some of these profiles and find out how long they've been there. And I can tell by her profile how long she's been the manager. So I want to focus on how the people that she has hired. Why? Because Diane and every one of the people listed have different biases about who they feel are top candidates. And so I want to know, and I want to see who Diane has actually hired. And then if I know them, I want to get to know some of those people along with knowing Diane. But I would strongly encourage you to spend time and do this for yourself, for the target companies that you want to go after. Drill down your search efforts. Figure out who you want to target, not just the company, but individuals, and find your John and Nada and see if you can open that back door and get a meet and greet with these people, or at a minimum, get your resume and have a phone call from your contact and the mutual contact to talk to her about you. And basically start telling her the story about how she's going to look like a genius for hiring Mike Perry, and how Mike Perry's going to go in there and help her group go from good to great. And if they're good now, how to make it even better. That's how you use this tool. Now, a couple other things you can do in social networking. This is all part of networking. Podcasts are the hot item now. They have been, again, thank goodness, thankfully to the pandemic, there are more podcasts now than any time. They go on, I think the number I heard was, a couple thousand new ones per day. So if I just Googled podcasts about marketing, why? Well, if I listen to some of the top 10 marketing podcasts or whatever, I'm going to get new, fresh ideas outside of the box I was in for the last 10, 20 years at the other employer I was at. So when I want to go into these places, I'm going to at least pick up what's the hot item, what's being talked about now. The one on the bottom of the slide there is 30 best marketing podcasts you should listen to. Maybe there's best practices in there. Maybe there's people I can contact. So I say subscribe to the podcast, comment on them, or create one yourself. Part of networking is delivering that message to people about, again, why your talents, your value, what do you bring to the table? If you create a podcast, you can talk about your ideas, how you've helped, successes that you've had. It's a virtual resume done in a podcast format. So you can consider that, and there's still blogs about marketing, same thing. Last one on that list, 15 marketing blogs to follow for their expertise and best practices. Who doesn't want to know that? If you're in marketing, follow these, contribute to them. Why? Because if you make comments, people see those comments. So another quick story for you. Years ago, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal about a gentleman who started following the blog of an executive VP at Microsoft. Now, this guy at Microsoft he would publish things about management and about growing the company. And the gentleman, the subject of the article in the Wall Street Journal, started commenting on the post. Well, other people started commenting on his comments with things like, wow, that's a great idea, or wow, that's a great approach. So what is this guy doing? He's basically out there demonstrating his strengths, demonstrating his knowledge, demonstrating his value. So ultimately, the Microsoft executive puts a blog post out there about how he, in the next year, is going to look for some 5 new district managers. He's going to create these 5 districts for Microsoft, so on and so forth. So the guy who has been contributing comments gets a hold of the author directly and says, tell you what, why don't you fly me out to Microsoft headquarters and make me your first district manager, and I'll help you find the other 5. 3 weeks later, a guy was making $250,000 and he was a district manager. Why? Because he read a blog. Now, every one of you can read a blog and every one of you can contribute. It's a way for you to network. It's a way for you to tell your story. It's a way for you to tell me why you're the pencil, the one that sticks up above the rest. That's what you can do. You could do this from the privacy of your own home. These are all tools in your toolbox. This is what you should be doing, pandemic or not. These are the kind of things that you have to add to your toolbox. So let's stick to the marketing scenario. So I'm looking for marketing, and much like this young lady here, she was a marketing person a few years ago. I was looking for a marketing person in my company. One of the things that this person had to do, because we're a small business, is they were going to have to do all our marketing materials digitally and hard copy, all our communications. And, I wanted them to create a YouTube channel. There was a lot of things that this individual is going to have to do. I wanted them to do web design, and they had to be a, good in design, graphic designer. So she sends in a resume, and there's a link on it to this online resume. I looked at it, and each one of these entries is a drill down of a particular project she did. I loved it because what it did is it demonstrated her knowledge in a lot of different scenarios, many of which had a very direct connection to what we were looking for. She's been my marketing director ever since then. And you can tell the kind of hits that she has on this website. So if you're going to do something where there would be real value, as there would be in marketing, graphic design, web design, for you to show your stuff, you can't show me web design in a resume. You can't show me web design in a conversation over breakfast. But you can doing something like this. This is part of your networking strategy. This is part of leaving me with something to remember you by. Give me something to follow up, to go back and go, ultimately, wow. And that's literally what we did. One of the other management folks and myself, we looked through her stuff and we literally on 2 or 3 of these said, wow, we can't let her get away. And we didn't. So you have to, how, again, back to how are you presenting yourself? Now, one of the things that I do on a regular basis is I ask the hiring managers in my network, what are the top 10 things you want from any candidate? Regardless of the specifics that you want for a particular job, what are the core traits and skills that you want in a candidate, or you don't even pay attention? So as you might imagine, I get back more than 10, but based on their ratings, I'm going to give you the top 10 things that hiring managers are looking for in every candidate. Now, no surprise, excellent communication skills, written and verbal. I mean, if any of you have been supervisors, I'd ask you this. Would you ever knowingly hire someone who didn't have really strong or excellent communication skills? I would hope your answer would be a resounding, of course not. Because if somebody has poor communication skills, it's like an anchor. They're not helping your team move the needle. They're holding you back and probably getting you in trouble. Self-confidence, we already talked about its value. It's huge. Well, look at where it is. It's number 2 on the list under communication. Employers need to see your presence, your belief in yourself, not just you running through some elevator speech that you've over rehearsed. That's not what they're looking for. Team building. You don't have to be the team leader to help build a team. You can be a great team member and have that and have someone see how you build the team around you. We all have to be innovative and resourceful. We all have to be MacGyver. So I always tell people, what examples can you give me of your innovative and resourceful abilities? How do you get out of the box? And just like communication, I would ask you again, would you hire anybody who wasn't really skilled in time management, planning, and organization? Hell no. There's no way. Because that's a disaster waiting to happen. In today's world, I cannot afford somebody who can't manage their time and is poorly organized. I can't. There's a great quote up here. You can't build a reputation on what you're going to do. You're no kidding. Your reputation is based on what you've already accomplished. What your actions you've already taken and what people's perceptions are of you based on those actions. Not what you talk about, but what you've done and accomplished. So the last 5 things, decision-making and judgment. Great decisions can turn a company around. Poor judgment can bury you overnight. We've all seen it. We've seen how CEOs are fired, let go, companies, stocks destroyed because of really poor judgments that are made. You have to be a global thinker. You have to be a visionary. You have to understand that the things that everything you do, everything you don't do has an impact on the rest of the group, the rest of your team, the rest of the company potentially. If you don't understand that, that bothers me a little bit. You can't be in your own world. You can't. I don't care how big your company is. You have other people depending on you. We all work on teams. You've got to be able to know that the things you do create a ripple in a pond, a big one or a little one, but it's still a ripple in a pond. You got to understand what that's going to do. And we all get this, I hope. You have to embrace diversity. You saw on that one website from Lubrizol, inclusion was one of the 6 main boxes they had on that website. Inclusion and diversity. I would say there's probably the minority of companies today don't believe in that, whether they're forced to believe in it or just want to truly embrace it. Do you? Can you give me examples of that? When you're networking with somebody, can you give them an example if somebody asked you about that? If not, you better go back and think hard about how you're going to talk about that, how you've been able to create a synergy 1 + 1 = 3 or 4 or 5 by using the diversity of talent around you. Leadership. You don't have to be the boss to be a leader. You can lead by example every day, no matter what position you're in. Make sure you can give me examples of that. Again, whether I'm the hiring manager or I'm a networking contact, these are synonymous situations. And accountability. Raise your hand if you've ever been thrown under the bus. Okay? Yeah, how about that? Now, put your hands down. Raise your hand if you enjoyed it. Yeah, shocking. Yeah, nobody raised their hand. How about that? I am looking for somebody who's willing to tell me they screwed up and not do this. I'm not looking for the scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz to blame somebody else. I'm looking for somebody who says, hey, that's on me. Here's how I'm going to fix it. My bad. Wow. Sadly, that's a rare quality today. If you have some great examples about how you're accountable, that's golden. It may be 10th on the top 10. That doesn't mean it's not important. You got to be accountable. Now, that's all I have for the slides in the presentation. Here are some, and I sent Jeff a copy of this, and I'll follow up with these links. But my job, I write a blog for job seekers called In the Business of You. That link is there, and again, I'll send this to Jeff. He can pass it along. There's our company. If you want to read more about my bio or whatever, there's our company's website, and then my company email address and my personal email address. If you want to follow up, if you have a question not appropriate to bring up in a group situation about networking, a resume or something, certainly I'll be glad to respond to you. So there you go, Jeff. I appreciate the fact that you asked me to be here today, and I hope you all felt that this was a valuable use of your time.
Here we go. So that's Mike's presentation. Anybody have any questions or comments? I mean, the one thing that I really liked out of the, like I said, I've been doing this for 14 years. The one thing that I've never heard anybody else say is the statement at the very beginning. If I hire you, how are you going to make me look like a genius to the rest of the people in my company because I hired you? I remember that comment a lot, and I think that's a really powerful statement that people can make. But if you've got any comments, please, you're welcome. Unmute your mic and please, let's hear from you. Things you like, what you like in his conversation. Anyone? Going once, going twice? All right. Well, all right. If there's no comments here, let me just share a few more slides and we will get out of here today.
Jeff, I not on this, but the tip of the week, very timely because I'm in quarantine, by the way, but still managed to do a 1-hour follow-up interview over Teams yesterday. So that could also serve as your good news.
Great.
Didn't talk about money. It's a startup, and I'm afraid he's going to try to beat me really badly with the salary, no benefits, nothing. It's just barely in its infancy. It's an LLC that the fellow has floated. So I think the tip of the week was very useful for me because next week, most likely we'll have the discussion. Thanks.
Very good. My son also accepted a new job. He's starting in 2 weeks, and it's also for a startup. So he had to deal with the whole salary negotiation thing and, and how to deal with it. So
yeah, because I mean, I've been out of work a long time, and it's still in the space that I'm trying to get into, but he's not even going to let me do that work, but more like a project lead, project manager. But, I look at it as, foot in the door. At least it's in the same space.
Right.
Yeah.
Anybody have any comments? Anybody have any more comments about the presentation today? I thought Mike did a really good job as far as just basic networking and getting out there.
I'll add a comment, Jeff.
Yeah.
I really like his idea of make me a genius, how you can do that. And to follow up with that, in the workshop, I suggest we ask a question at the end of the first response. It says, what can I do for you in the next 6 to 9 months to say you were glad you hired me? Which is that very topic that you want to find out early in the interview so you can find out the specifics of what they will measure you by and what achievements and what expectations they have so that you can then sell to those expectations and how that matches. So I think it's an excellent networking presentation, really covers all the bases. He did a very, very good job.
Right. Okay.
Hey, Jeff and Walt, I will say one question that I typically have in interviews where when it tends to get to the end and they say, well, do you have any questions for me? One question that I typically ask is, what would I, assuming you agree to hire me and I accept the position, what would I have accomplished at the end of the year to make you think this was an incredible hire, right? And so that's either of the hiring manager or the HR person, and they tend to come back with essentially what they're going to be measuring you by when they give you the answer to that. So I have used that question in interviews quite often.
That's a great question. I would suggest you move it up front. Don't wait to the end.
Yeah, you want to know at the beginning of an interview what's the important thing that interviewer needs you to accomplish, so that way you know what to focus on. The good question to ask at the end of the interview is, how do I compare to the ideal candidate? Not how do I compare to the other candidates, because you don't care about the other candidates, but in that person's mind, how do I compare to the ideal candidate? And if they have some hesitancy, then you can address, oh, well, we never talked about this because you never brought up that it was important. So, but if you can bring up that, your question, Broderick, at the beginning of the interview, what are the 3 or 4 most important things that I can do to make, to be successful in the role, to make you look good? Then you know what to focus on during the next 30 to 90 minutes, 30 to 60 minutes of an interview. And you know what to follow up with at the end of the interview by saying, well, you said at the beginning of the interview, you need me to do A, B, and C. And I've got that experience. I'm willing to help. So tell me, how do I compare to the ideal candidate? And what's the next step?
Gotcha.
Anybody else? All right, well, let me share just a couple more things. We'll get out of here. If you've not put your 30-second introductions or your information into the chat window, we ask you to please do so. That way I can get everybody onto the roster. I'll make sure you get an email this afternoon with everybody's contact information. So please, if you will, please go and do that. Career DFW, let's see here. Did it go? No, it didn't. Here we go. Career DFW and Career USA, we're putting on training 4 days a week. Please join us next Tuesday. Ruth Lipsky will be with us for LinkedIn Tuesday to talk about how to drive recruiters to your LinkedIn profile. Ruth works for Lee Heck Harrison. She's dealing with people who are unemployed on a daily basis. And she really is, it's a really great presentation. She really follows all the latest stuff that LinkedIn is doing. So please join us for that next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Next Wednesday at 1 p.m., the practice interview team, hopefully we'll have an actual practice interview that we can share and watch, that you all can watch. And if we don't, we will play one of the lessons from the 13-part workshop about interviewing and about just a different facet of interviewing. So please join us next Wednesday at 1. Next Thursday, being the fourth Thursday of the month, we will talk about networking. And today was a networking presentation, but we'll have a different networking presentation next Thursday, so please join us. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. On the Career USA YouTube channel, please click on playlist, because there's over 400 videos, and otherwise it'll be sort of hard to find necessarily what you're looking for. But every video that I upload goes into one of 7 different playlists. And then at the very bottom where you see that red arrow, view full playlist, click there, because that way you'll be able to scan down that particular playlist and find the topic that you'd like to go back and watch, and you're welcome to do so. And just remember that any of them from the North Dallas group, the speaker doesn't start until 20 to 30 minutes into the video. Hopefully you'll join us today at lunch, or at least I'm going to be there for lunch. So hopefully somebody will come join me so I don't sit and eat by myself. 1145 Country Burger, 3115 West Parker Road. It's on the northwest corner of Parker and Independence. Thank you very much for joining us today. We do have one person who was with us today in person. Please come join us. We're meeting back in person now. So we'd love to be able to see you. We'd love to be able to network. I know I'm going to be signing off here, but I'm going to have a conversation with the person who's here with us today and get to know him a little bit better. And hopefully you'll join us in future weeks and be able to do that. So if you live in the DFW area, we hope to see you soon. So thank you very much, everybody. And we will see you all. Have a great weekend.